Some stories are written in ink. Ours are written in fear. Welcome to Whisper Pen. Take a deep breath and let the darkness in.
Story 1. Every dream has a price. 2 months ago, we thought our price was just sleepless nights and memorized lines. We were wrong. Dead wrong. That dream was called the Pabst Theater. A grand old lady by the river, the architectural jewel of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For a group of university drama students, getting to use this historic theater for our fall production was an unbelievable privilege. Inside, it was a time capsule of faded red velvet, glittering gold leaf balconies, and a massive crystal chandelier that hung over the audience like a silent threat. It was magnificent and slightly decayed, like a beautiful dowager hiding a terminal illness. And our star, the soul of our production, was Anna, my girlfriend. When Anna got the lead role of Lily in the play Echoes of Ophelia, she called me screaming with a pure, crystalline joy that I can now only remember with a sharp pang in my chest. I'm Jake, just a regular economics major, an outsider in the world of theatrical passions. My role was being the star's boyfriend. I brought the coffee, I listened to the complaints about line reading, and I was the loudest clapper. Her happiness was my happiness. Our troupe was a small, tight-knit group, a family of 10, bound by passion, cheap coffee, and deadline-induced stress. Anna and me, Jake, the central couple. She was the talent, I was the support. Mark, our director, an ambitious grad student who saw this play as his ticket to fame. He could be a bit arrogant, but his passion was real. David, the freshman sound prodigy, shy, spectacled, but a genius with a mixing board. He could make the theater's old speakers whisper or roar. Sarah, the costume designer, a punk rock girl with tattoos, a bright smile, and the ability to create a ball gown out of 2 trash bags and a roll of duct tape. Liam, the male lead, playing Hamlet in flashbacks, a gentle giant, a football captain who'd quit the team to pursue acting, a decision his family never forgave. Chloe, the stage manager, tiny, perpetually worried, and the person who wrote everything down in her notebook as if it were scripture. She was the glue that held our chaos together. Ben and Tom, the twin brothers on lighting, identical in looks but opposite in personality. Ben was loud and jokey, Tom was quiet and meticulous. They communicated in winks and clipped sentences only they understood. Maria, the supporting actress, playing Lily's mother, a retired drama professor who joined the play for fun, bringing a calm, experienced presence to the group. The play, Echoes of Ophelia, was a strange script Mark had found in the university archives. It was dark, poetic, and told the story of a young woman named Lily who becomes so obsessed with the character of Ophelia that the lines between her reality and Shakespeare's tragedy blur. A lost masterpiece, Mark had declared, his eyes shining, and we will be the first to bring it to light. During our first walkthrough, the old theater manager told us the ghost stories about Captain Pabst, the founder, who still lingered and played the occasional harmless prank. But he told another story, his voice lower, as if speaking of a deceased family member. "There's another spirit here," he said. "They call her the White Lady. A young actress, Eleanor Vance, died on this stage many years ago. A tragedy." "How did she die?" Chloe asked timidly, her pen already poised over her notebook. "No one's sure," the manager sighed. "An accident," they said. "She doesn't harm anyone. She's just a lingering sadness. Sometimes the night crew sees her, sitting in the empty audience, just quietly watching. We dismissed it as local color, a story to add to the theater's mystique. We were too high on our dream to see the cracks already forming in the walls of our reality." The final rehearsal was a somber affair. No one spoke. We moved like automatons, going through the motions. Anna was performing Lily's first monologue, the one where she begins to feel Ophelia's presence. And that's when it appeared. No thunder, no special effects. It simply materialized backstage, a shimmering white figure. Eleanor. This time it looked more solid, more defined, no longer a lingering sadness. It was a powerful presence. We all froze. Chloe let out a small, strangled gasp. Eleanor slowly turned her head towards the small girl. Her body didn't move, just the head, swiveling nearly 180 degrees with a dry crack, like a dead branch snapping. A single word echoed in my mind, a feeling, not a sound. Cold and final. Noisy. And then, the pen in Chloe's hand suddenly lifted into the air. It spun once, the sharp tip aimed at her, and then it flew. It didn't fly fast. It flew slowly, almost leisurely, as if savoring the horror in Chloe's eyes. She screamed and tried to back away, but she tripped. The pen continued its unstoppable flight and plunged directly into her left eye, burying itself halfway. She fell backwards, convulsed for a few seconds, and then lay still. Blood began to well up from the socket, running in a thin stream onto the old wooden floor. The first death, quick, brutal, and utterly silent. The horrified paralysis finally broke. Anna screamed from the stage. "Run!" Liam roared, and the hunt began. We scattered like a kicked anthill.
Mark screamed, "The main doors! Everyone, to the main doors!" He ran towards the grand lobby where the audience entered. Ben and Tom, the twins, yelled, "The control booth! We could lock the door and call the cops!" They scrambled up the narrow spiral staircase leading to the booth high above. Maria, on her crutches, was being helped by Liam, hobbling towards the backstage exit. Sarah, David, Anna, and I ran in the opposite direction, towards the warren of dressing rooms, hoping to find a place to hide and regroup. It didn't chase us. It just stood there, center stage, its form becoming more and more solid. It just watched, like a director enjoying her play unfold. The first group to reach their destination was Mark. He burst into the main lobby with its heavy oak doors. He threw his weight against them. They didn't budge, as if they were welded shut. "They're stuck!" he shrieked in panic. And then the massive lobby chandelier, a ton of crystal and brass, began to shake. Mark looked up, his eyes wide. "No," he whispered. From a distance, we could only watch in horror as the chandelier fell. It didn't fall fast. It descended with a majestic slowness like a church bell and crushed Mark into a wet, red paste beneath it. The sound, a sickening crunch of metal and bone, will haunt me forever. High above, in the control booth, Ben and Tom made it inside and bolted the door. We could hear them shouting over the intercom system. "There's no signal. The phones are dead," Ben's voice cried, laced with desperation. And then Tom screamed, "The window! Look at the window!" We couldn't see what they saw, but we heard it, the sound of glass beginning to crack, like breaking ice. Then the twins' horrible, agonized screams. And then a sickening sound of twisting metal, snapping bone, and finally, silence. The intercom hissed with static. On the other side, Liam and Maria had almost reached the fire exit, but as they approached, the door swung open on its own. It wasn't an exit. Inside was a solid brick wall. The door had opened onto a narrow, dark, dead-end space. And then the door slammed shut. We heard Maria's scream and Liam's roar, followed by a series of heavy, wet thuds, like something being slammed against a wall, over and over. And then silence. In less than 5 minutes, 7 of our friends were dead. Each death was silent, quick, and decisive. It didn't taunt.
It simply erased what it deemed unnecessary. Only me, Anna, Sarah, and David were left. We had made it into a large dressing room and locked the door. We stood there, panting, backs against the door, listening to the dead silence outside.
"We have to do something," Sarah whispered, the first to regain her composure. Her eyes were red, but filled with determination. "We can't just sit here and wait to die." David, the tech prodigy, was pale, but his brain was still working. The substage," he stammered. "There's an old emergency exit. It leads to the city's sewer tunnels, a Prohibition-era escape route. I saw it on the old blueprints. It was our only hope, a slim chance at survival. But to get to it, we had to cross the stage. We had to cross the place where it was waiting." Our plan was desperate. Sarah, with her knowledge of the theater's structure, knew of an old pulley system backstage that could be used to create a diversion. David would try to use his phone to trigger some leftover sound effects from a portable speaker he carried. Anna and I would use that chance to run across the stage to the trapdoor. "Meet you down there," I said, looking each of them in the eye. A promise we all knew might not be kept. We cracked the door open. The stage was empty and silent. It was gone, but we knew it was still there, watching. "Now," Sarah whispered. She ran for the pulley system. David ducked behind a set piece, his phone in his hand. Sarah yanked hard on a rope. A large backdrop on the far side of the stage crashed down with a boom. At the same time, David played a sound file of shattering glass from his portable speaker. "Go!" I yelled, grabbing Anna's hand.
We burst from our hiding spot, sprinting across the vast stage. The wooden floorboards felt a mile long, but it was smarter than we thought. Halfway across, a rope snaked down from the rigging above and wrapped around Anna's ankle. She cried out and fell. I turned back, fumbling with the rope. It was tight as a steel python. And then I saw Sarah. It had appeared right behind her. Eleanor, its hand was on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah froze, her face a mask of terror. "My props," a voice whispered in our heads. And then every pin, scissor, and metal tape measure from Sarah's toolkit lifted into the air. They swirled around her in a glittering, deadly tornado, and then they flew inward. It wasn't a quick death. It was brutal. Sarah collapsed, her body riddled with the tools of her own trade. David saw it and screamed in despair. He threw his portable speaker at Eleanor. It passed right through her form and clattered to the floor. Eleanor slowly turned towards David. David knew he was out of time. He turned and ran, but he didn't run for an exit. He ran towards the center of the stage, towards me and Anna. "Get her free!" he yelled. "Hurry!" He was buying us time. It glided after David, unhurried. David ran to the edge of the stage, to the orchestra pit. He didn't stop. He jumped. A sickening thump echoed as his body hit the chairs and instruments below. A final, selfless act. His sacrifice gave me the time I needed. I got the rope off Anna's ankle. "Let's go!" I yelled, pulling her to her feet. The trap door was right in front of us. We plunged down the dark stairs, slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind us. We were in the substage. Just the two of us.
"We didn't survive. We just didn't die. There's a big difference." After we escaped to the sewer tunnels, we called the police. The official story they released was a carbon monoxide leak from the theater's old heating system. It caused, they said, mass hallucinations, panic, and a series of bizarre, tragic accidents. The bodies of our 8 friends were proof of the tragedy. Anna and I told them the truth. We told them about Eleanor, the white dress, the impossible deaths. They listened with pitying eyes. They called it severe psychological trauma and survivor's guilt. They sent us to counselors who nodded sympathetically and prescribed pills to help us sleep. But we couldn't sleep. How could we sleep when closing our eyes meant seeing Chloe's face with a pen in her eye? When we could still hear the sound of Ben and Tom's bones breaking? When the image of Liam beating his own face in played on a sick, endless loop? The ghosts didn't follow us out of the theater. We carried them out in our heads. Our love, once a bright beacon, became another casualty. We couldn't look at each other without seeing the tragedy. In Anna's eyes, I saw that stage. In my arms, she felt the rope that had grabbed her ankle. We were 2 broken pieces from the same wreck. our sharp edges cutting each other whenever we tried to get close. We broke up 2 months later. No tears, no fights, just a tired acknowledgement that what we had died in that theater, along with our friends.
6 months have passed. I live alone in a small, sterile apartment. I dropped out of the economics program. I work a part-time job at a coffee shop. I just try to get through the day. I avoid mirrors. I avoid silence. The TV in my apartment is always on, even if I'm not watching. Tonight, I was making a cup of tea when I dropped the mug. It shattered on the kitchen floor. As I bent down to clean up the pieces, I saw my reflection in a large shard. And I saw them. Not Eleanor. Much worse. I saw my friends. They were standing behind me, right there in my small kitchen. They weren't vengeful ghosts. They looked just as they had before. Liam with his confident smile. Sarah winking. David shyly adjusting his glasses. Chloe hugging her notebook. They just looked at me. Not with blame, but with silence. That silence was more painful than any accusation. I spun around. No one was there. The kitchen was empty. But when I looked back at the shard, they were still there. I started to cry for the first time in months. Not out of fear, but because a horrible truth had just pierced through me. Eleanor had won. A victory more complete than simply killing us. She didn't need to haunt us. She had turned our own memories into a prison, our minds into her own private haunted stage. I am the last audience member, forced to watch that tragedy play out over and over every day for the rest of my life. The pain, the loss, and the torturous question, why me? Why did I survive? I stand up, leaving the broken pieces on the floor. I walk to the window and look down at the city lights. The play never ends. It just changes venues. And now, the stage is inside my head.
Story 2. Please, someone. The camera is still on. I'm too afraid to turn it off. It's in here, in this room with me. I'm hiding behind the teacher's desk in Chem Lab 2B. The sharp smell of cleaning chemicals is stinging my nose, but it can't cover up the other smell. The smell of ozone, of static electricity. The smell of something wrong that just tore a hole in reality to get in. I'm staring at my laptop screen, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The screen is split into 4 security camera feeds I set up. Hallway A, the library, the cafeteria, and Chem Lab 2B. And in that 4th frame, I see myself, a skinny, pale kid, huddled behind the teacher's desk. And I see it. It's standing in the corner of the room, right in my physical blind spot. I can't see it if I lift my head, but the camera can. It's there, on my screen, a tall, unnaturally thin figure in an old-fashioned black suit that clings to a formless body. It has no face, absolutely none. Just a smooth, blank, white void like an eggshell. It's not moving. It's just standing there, watching. 10 minutes ago, it was in hallway A. 20 minutes ago, it was just a smudge at the edge of the cafeteria feed. It's been moving from camera to camera, getting closer each time. And now, it's in here. I'm trying not to make a sound. I'm biting my lips so hard I can taste salt. But I can't stop my own ragged breathing. You want to know the most terrifying part? I just risked a look. I slowly lifted my head over the desk, looking towards the corner where the camera shows it standing. There's nothing there. Just an empty corner, with old cracks in the wall and a faded periodic table of elements.
But when I look back at the laptop screen, it's still there, looming, silent, a solid mass of horror that only exists through a lens. It knows I'm watching it on the camera. I can feel it. The blank void where its face should be seems to be boring into me through the screen. Why did I do this? Why am I here? For a stupid challenge, a 24-hour challenge in America's most haunted high school video. I thought it would get me millions of views. I thought it would be fun. I was wrong. Dead wrong. It just moved. On the screen, a long, stick-thin arm is slowly rising. The fingers are freakishly long, jointless, and they're pointing right at me, right at my hiding spot. Oh God, it knows where I am.
It all started with typical 17-year-old arrogance. My name is Ethan, and my YouTube channel called Ethan Explores has about, 217 subscribers. Mostly friends, family, and probably a few bot accounts. My videos were mainly exploring abandoned places around El Paso, an old movie theater, a crumbling cannery. They were okay, but they weren't getting traction. I needed a hit, something big. And then I read the article, America's Most Haunted Schools. And topping the list was our city's pride and joy, El Paso High School, also known as the Lady on the Hill. My school. Built in 1916, El Paso High School looks more like a Roman Colosseum than a school. Massive Doric columns, a stadium carved into the side of a mountain, and long, echoing hallways that make you feel like you're walking through an ancient museum. And of course, it had its ghost stories. The most famous is the ghost in the yearbook. Legend says a female student took her own life in the 80s by jumping from a balcony inside the school. A few weeks later, when that year's yearbook was printed, people noticed something strange. In the cheerleading team's group photo, there was a blurry, out-of-focus face nestled between the other girls, a face that belonged to no one on the team. They say it's the spirit of the dead girl, not wanting to be forgotten. That yearbook is still on display in a glass case in the library, a morbid tourist attraction. Every generation of students has their own stories, footsteps in empty hallways, whispers in the auditorium, and the feeling of being watched in the oldest parts of the school. To most people, they were just fun stories. To me, it was a gold mine. Listen up, you guys, I announced to my two best friends, Liam and Sarah, during lunch. I'm going to do a 24-hour challenge at El Paso High. Liam, a big, kind-hearted guy who did tech for the school plays, nearly choked on his sandwich. Are you insane? Mr. Franklin will skin you alive if he catches you in the school after hours. He won't catch me, I said confidently. I have a plan. I'll hide in the stagecraft room after your drama practice, and I've got the gear. I patted my backpack. Inside was a laptop, 4 tiny wireless security cameras, a massive power bank, and enough junk food to survive a small nuclear war. Sarah, who was much smarter and more pragmatic, frowned. Ethan, that's a terrible idea. You'll get caught, and those ghost stories are just that, stories. That's what we're gonna find out, I winked. Imagine the title, I Caught the Yearbook Ghost on Camera. It would go viral. I'll be the next Shane Dawson. Or you'll be the next kid caught by an old janitor named Hector and get detention for the rest of your life, Liam grumbled. But I saw a spark of interest in his eyes. Where are you putting the cameras? One in the main hall, right by the yearbook case, one in the library, where they say the trays move on their own, and one on me, for that authentic reaction footage. Your authentic reaction to sitting alone in the dark and being scared by the creaks of an old building? Sarah teased. But she was smiling. All right, you idiot, but if you get caught, I don't know you. And so, the plan was set. I felt like an explorer on the verge of discovering a new land. I was buzzing with adrenaline and youthful stupidity. I had no idea that I wasn't the hunter. I was the bait.
Getting in was easier than I thought. After Liam's drama practice ended, I just slipped into the stagecraft room, a chaotic mess of old costumes, weird props, and the dusty smell of decades. I waited. The last footsteps faded, a lock clicked, and then silence. A heavy silence, different from the silence of an empty house. This was the silence of a huge, cavernous space holding its breath. I waited another hour just to be safe, then crept out. The school at night was a totally different beast. Streetlights cast long, distorted shadows through the tall windows. Every squeak of my sneakers echoed like a gunshot in the empty hallways. My heart was beating a little faster, but it was excitement, not fear. "Welcome to Ethan Explores," I whispered to my recording phone. "It's 10 p.m. and we are officially inside the Lady on the Hill. The 24-hour challenge starts now." I set up my cameras. First, the main hallway, opposite the famous glass case. Through the glass, I could see the old yearbook, open to the cheerleading photo. In the dim light, that blurry face looked especially unsettling. I placed the tiny camera on top of a locker, camouflaging it with a forgotten flyer. Next, the library. A massive 2-story space with towering bookshelves that looked like giant skeletons in the dark. The air in here was noticeably colder. I put a camera on a high shelf, giving it a panoramic view. The third camera went in the cafeteria. The long tables and chairs were stacked up, looking like bizarre, hunched-over figures. I hid the camera behind a vending machine. Finally, I picked my base camp, Chem Lab 2B. It was at the end of a quiet hallway, had a big teacher's desk I could hide behind if needed, and most importantly, it had a power outlet. I set up the fourth camera in the corner, aimed at the desk. This was the Ethan cam. I settled in, opened my laptop, and synced all 4 cameras. Everything was perfect. 4 crisp feeds. I opened a bag of chips, leaned back in my chair, and prepared for a long, boring night, hopefully punctuated by a few strange noises I could hype up in my video. The first hour passed peacefully. I was even starting to get a little sleepy. I scrolled through social media, replied to a few comments on my channel. What a joke. Ghosts. And that's when I saw it for the first time.
I was busy reviewing the footage I just shot in the hallway, trying to find a more dramatic angle. My eyes scanned across the 4 live security feeds on my laptop, and then I paused. In the cafeteria feed, something was wrong. In the far left corner, right at the edge of the frame, there was a blur, a dark, vertical smudge like a video glitch or a weird shadow. I squinted. It didn't match the shadow of any object in the room. "Must be the light," I muttered, trying to rationalize it. I got up and walked to the chem lab window, looking outside. Nothing. The night sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. I went back to the laptop. The smudge was gone. Weird, I thought, but shrugged. Probably a moth on the lens. I went back to my work. About a half hour later, I glanced at the screens again. This time, my eyes were drawn to the library feed. In the aisle between 2 tall bookshelves, there was a figure. It was just standing there, motionless. It was too far away to see any detail, but the shape was unmistakable. Tall, thin, dressed in dark clothing. My heart started beating faster. "Hector," I whispered. It could be the janitor on his rounds, but it was almost midnight, and he never made his rounds without his industrial-strength flashlight. This figure was almost completely shrouded in shadow. I watched it, holding my breath. It didn't move. A minute, 2 minutes, 5. It just stood there like a statue. "Okay, this is getting creepy," I said to myself. I decided to test something.
I got up, grabbed a metal ruler from the teacher's desk, and whacked it hard against a water pipe running along the wall. Clang! Clang! Clang!
The sound echoed through the silent school. If that was Hector, he definitely heard it. I glued my eyes to the screen. The figure in the library didn't flinch. But then, just as I was about to sit down, it began to move. It didn't walk, it glided. Slowly, it backed away, melting into the deeper shadows of the bookshelf and disappearing. What the hell was that? I breathed out. The adrenaline was kicking in. This was it. This was what I wanted. Something I couldn't explain. My channel was gonna blow up. I was so excited, I didn't realize the obvious. It hadn't disappeared. It had just relocated. A few minutes later, Liam texted me. "Everything good, man? Don't get got by the yearbook ghost." I chuckled, feeling confident again. Better than good. I think I caught something. A weird shadow figure in the library. Definitely not a person. Be careful, dude. That building is weird at night. I always feel like I'm being watched when I'm in the stagecraft room late. Relax. I've got 4 sets of eyes. Nothing's getting past me. I was in the middle of typing my reply when my eyes were drawn to the screen again. The main hallway feed. It was there. No longer a distant shadow or a blurry smudge, it was standing right in front of the yearbook display case. Much clearer. A tall, thin human shape in a black suit. And this time, I could see the face, or rather, the lack of one. A blank, smooth, white void. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. It was staring into the display case, as if it were reading the story of the dead girl. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a shadow. This wasn't a trick of the light. This was something real. And it was moving through my cameras, from the cafeteria to the library and now to the main hall. It was getting closer. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking. Liam, Sarah, something is wrong, really wrong.
The silence on the other end of the text was deafening. I knew they thought I was kidding. I knew they thought I was just trying to create drama for my video. I looked back at the laptop screen. It was still standing there, motionless. And then it slowly turned. Its movements were stiff, unnatural, like a marionette with its strings cut. The blank white void was now aimed directly at the camera, directly at me. I felt like I was being sucked into that emptiness. A wave of dizziness and nausea washed over me. And then it started to walk. It moved down the hallway, heading towards the wing where I was hiding. Its footsteps made no sound. It just glided, a silent, black specter of horror. I jumped to my feet, my heart hammering. I had to get out of there, right now. I grabbed my laptop, not daring to take my eyes off the screen. It was still coming. I ran to the door of the chem lab. I twisted the knob. Locked. No, I whimpered, yanking on the handle. I didn't lock it. I was sure I didn't lock it. I looked back at the screen. It had reached the end of the hallway. It was standing right outside my door. I held my breath. Could I hear anything? A scratch? A knock? No. Absolute silence. But on the screen, it was there. And then it did something that made me scream. It raised its hand and phased through the door. Its thin hand passed through the solid wood as if it were air, and then its whole body followed. I looked up at the real door. Nothing happened. It remained solid, still. But on the 4th camera feed, the Ethan cam, it was now in the room. It stood in the corner, directly opposite me, a cold, invisible presence in the real world, but terrifyingly real through the lens. This was the moment I realized the awful truth. It wasn't a ghost. A ghost is part of the physical world, just in a different form. This thing, it was from somewhere else. A place that could only be seen through the filter of technology, reality's blind spot.
In a fit of pure panic, I dove behind the teacher's desk. That's where I am now, writing this,
watching my predator on the screen, a predator my own eyes can't see. That blank, white void. I know what it's thinking. It's enjoying my fear. It's playing with me. It slowly raises its arm. The long, jointless fingers point right at me, right at my hiding spot. I scream, a choked, strangled sound. I squeeze my eyes shut, waiting for a cold touch, for an unimaginable end. But nothing happens. I slowly open my eyes. I glance at the laptop screen. It's gone, from all the feeds. The hallway is empty. The library is silent. The cafeteria is still. And ChemLab 2B contains only me. Silence. Then, do I hear it? A bell. A school bell, signaling the end of a period, ringing impossibly in the dead of night. And then I hear footsteps. Real footsteps. Hurried. Ethan? Ethan? Are you in there? Liam's voice. The ChemLab door burst open. The beams of Liam and Sarah's flashlights cut through the room. "Oh my God, Ethan, you scared the hell out of us," Sarah said, her voice a mix of anger and relief. "We called you 100 times. You didn't answer." I just stared at them, dumbfounded. How did you get in?" "Mr. Franklin has a spare set of keys," Liam said. "We had to make up some crazy story about you leaving your asthma inhaler in here." He looked around. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse than a ghost," I stammered, pointing at the laptop. It was right here, in the room." They looked at the screen. 4 empty frames. "There's nothing there, Ethan," Sarah said gently, putting a hand on my shoulder. "This building can play tricks on your mind." "No, it was real. It had no face. It walked through the wall. You could only see it through the cameras." They exchanged a worried glance, the kind of look you give someone who's lost their mind. "Okay, Ethan, let's just go home. Enough adventure for one night." They helped me pack up my things. I was still shaking, my mind reeling. Had I imagined it all? Had fear and loneliness created a monster in my head? As we walked out of the school into the first light of dawn, I felt a wave of relief. The cool morning air filled my lungs. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe it was all a trick of the mind.
A week has passed. I didn't upload the video. I reviewed the footage dozens of times, and there was nothing. Just empty hallways, silent rooms, and me, an idiot panicking at shadows. No tall, thin man, no blank face. Liam and Sarah were right. I had scared myself into a frenzy. We even joked about it. Slender Man High School Edition, Liam called it. We laughed. A little forced, maybe, but it was laughter. Life was back to normal. Tonight, I'm in my room, editing a different video, one about an old flea market. Safe, boring, but I needed something to take my mind off that night. I drag and drop clips into the editing software. I had music, I color correct, the familiar routine, and then I need a transition effect. I open my effects folder, and I see it. A video file I don't remember recording. The file name is just a random string of numbers. Curious, I double-click it. A video player pops up. It's security camera footage, but not from my cameras. This is a different angle, a high angle from the ceiling of ChemLab 2B. And I see myself in the video, sitting at the laptop, pale-faced. I see Liam and Sarah enter. I see them talk to me, help me pack my things. I see us leave. But the video doesn't stop recording. After we're gone, the camera keeps recording. The room is empty, silent, for about a minute. And then, from the corner of the room, it steps out. The tall, thin man, the blank face. It walks to the teacher's desk, where I had been sitting. It leans over. Its long, grotesque fingers tap on my laptop's keyboard, and then it raises its blank head and stares directly into the camera.
As if it knew it was being recorded, as if it was leaving a message for me.
My blood runs cold. This isn't my video. So where did it come from? How did it get on my computer? I look around my room, my hands shaking. The window is open, a cool night breeze blowing in. My desk lamp casts a warm glow on my keyboard. Everything is normal. I look at the built-in webcam on my laptop, a tiny black dot. Is it there? Right now? Watching me through my own devices? I open my laptop's camera software. My own tired, scared face appears. The room behind me is empty, but I don't believe it anymore. I grab my phone. I open the front-facing camera. I aim it behind me. The phone screen reflects my room, my closet, my bed, and it's standing right behind my chair. Tall, looming, the black suit clinging to it, and that dead, white, featureless void. I scream and leap out of my chair, spinning around. Nothing. The room is empty. But I know it's there, in the blind spot, in the world that only a lens can see. I didn't escape that school. I just brought it home with me. It's not a ghost tied to a place. It's a virus, one that spreads through lenses, through screens, and I opened the door. I'm standing here in the middle of my room, holding my phone. I can see it on the screen, just a few feet away. It's not moving. It's just watching. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what it is. I only know one thing. From now on, I will never be alone again. And I will never be able to look at a screen the same way. But I can't stop looking, because at least when I'm looking, I know where it is.
Story 3. I'm in the bathroom. The 3rd floor dorm bathroom, Wilson Hall. I've locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle. I know it won't do any good. It can't stop him. But it makes me feel like I'm doing something, instead of just sitting here and waiting. I'm staring at the white porcelain sink. I don't dare lift my head. I don't dare look at the large, fogged-up mirror on the wall, because I know he's in there, waiting. My heart is pounding like a frantic drum. I can hear the blood rushing in my ears. My hands are shaking so badly, I can barely hold my phone. I'm trying to record this. I don't even know why. Maybe so if someone finds me, they'll know what happened. It started slowly. A shadow in the corner of my eye. A fleeting image on my dark phone screen. A face reflected in a puddle of rain on the campus green. Always him. Always the same face. A young man, maybe my age. Dark hair, sad eyes. He never said anything. He just looked at me. A desperate look, like he was trying to tell me something. But tonight, everything changed. When I was brushing my teeth, I glanced in the mirror, and he was there. Not a fleeting image. He was standing right behind me, as clear as day. He was wearing an old-fashioned button-down shirt. His skin was pale, as if it were drained of all blood. And he wasn't just looking at me anymore. He was pointing. A bony, pale finger pointing straight at me, at my chest. And then, slowly, so slowly, he shook his head, a look of pure anguish. I screamed. I stumbled back, tripping and falling onto the cold tile floor. When I looked up, he was still there in the mirror, but something else had appeared next to him. A shadow.
a solid, warped, black shadow. It had no definite shape, but it radiated pure malice. It loomed over the boy. And the boy, his eyes were now filled with absolute terror. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the shadow. I scrambled backwards all the way to the door. I slammed it shut, locked it. How long have I been in here? 10 minutes? An hour? I don't know. I don't want to look, but I have to know. Slowly, trembling, I raise my head. My eyes travel up from the floor, past the sink, and finally, to the mirror. The boy's face is pressed against the glass, as if being forced from the other side. His skin is distorted, his eyes are wide with horror, his mouth is open in a silent scream. And the shadow, it's consuming him. Inky black tendrils are wrapping around his neck, squeezing. I'm not the one he was trying to warn. I was the bait, and I just led that thing right to him. Oh God, it all started with a stupid yearbook, a goddamn curiosity.
It all started on a dreary Tuesday afternoon in Athens, Ohio. The kind of weather that makes you want to curl up with hot chocolate. Instead, me, Maya, and Ben were in Alden Library, supposedly the second most haunted place on campus, right after the Ridges Asylum. Our mission? An Ohio history paper on the shifting student culture of the 1970s. Topics so dry it could make a mummy yawn. I'd rather watch paint dry, Ben groaned. Ben was the live-in-the-moment type. He was the lead guitarist for a student band with perpetually messy hair and a collection of vintage band t-shirts. To him, history was anything that happened before last week. Come on, it could be interesting, Maya said, ever the optimist. Maya was a journalism major, never without a notebook and pen, ready to capture any story. She had a boundless curiosity and a smile that could light up a room. And I'm Noah, the one in the middle, the observer. I'm a photography major. I love finding the beauty and the strangeness in ordinary things. An Alden Library with its long aisles, stacks of old books, and solemn atmosphere was always a source of inspiration. A professor said we should check out the old yearbooks in the archives, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic, to see the fashion and student activities. The archives were in the basement, a cold place that smelled of old paper. A stern-faced librarian with thick glasses led us to a row of metal shelves packed with heavy, hard-bound books, the yearbooks of Ohio University, going back in time. We started with the most recent years and worked our way back. The 90s with its frizzy hair and baggy jeans, the 80s with its neon colors and shoulder pads, and then we hit our target, the 70s. We sat around a large table flipping through the yellowed pages. It was funny to see how serious young people looked in black and white photos. The long hair, the bell-bottoms, and a lost sense of innocence.
Hey, check it out, Ben laughed, pointing at a photo. This guy looks exactly like a young Professor Daltrey. We were flipping through the 1978 yearbook when Maya stopped. Wait a second, she said, her voice a little strange. She pointed to the senior portraits page. Most of the photos were identical, forced smiles, suits, and sweaters. But one photo was different. The photo of a boy named Daniel Miller. It had been crossed out. A big, crude X, drawn in red ink, was slashed over his smiling face. That's weird, I said, leaning in for a closer look. Who would do that? Probably a bitter ex-girlfriend, Ben guessed with a shrug. But Maya was squinting. No. Look at it. The ink is old, really old, and it's pressed so hard it almost tore the paper. I looked at Daniel Miller's face. He had a kind smile, bright eyes, and wavy hair. He looked like a normal, happy kid. Why would someone hate him enough to erase his existence from the school's history? The journalist in Maya was hooked. I have to find out what happened to this guy, she declared. Oh no, here we go again. Maya had dragged us into similar investigations before, like the time she tried to prove the student union chili was the cause of a minor food poisoning outbreak. It turned out to be the potato salad. Come on, this is a real mystery, Maya said. A crossed-out face, a story waiting to be told. I had to admit, I was curious too. I took out my camera and took a picture of the photo, a close-up portrait of Daniel Miller with that haunting red X across it. I had no idea that by taking that picture, I wasn't just capturing an image, I was sending an invitation.
Maya's initial investigation didn't turn up much. There was no record of Daniel Miller graduating. He wasn't on any lists of students who dropped out. He simply vanished from the school's records after the spring of 1978, as if he never existed. He probably just transferred, Ben said, trying to kill Maya's enthusiasm. Mystery solved. Can we get back to the paper now? But we couldn't. The mystery of Daniel Miller had taken root in our minds. And that's when I started to see him. The first time was later that night. I was walking back to my dorm. The rain had stopped. I passed a large puddle on the sidewalk. For a split second, my reflection in the water seemed to change. Instead of my face, I saw another, Daniel Miller's face. His sad eyes stared into mine for a second before the water rippled and the image was gone. I stopped dead, my heart pounding. I'm just tired, I told myself. I had been staring at that photo for too long. But then it happened again. The next day in class, my laptop screen went to sleep. On the dark, glossy screen, I saw him again, standing behind me, looking over my shoulder. I whipped my head around. No one was there. I started to panic. I told Maya and Ben. "You're obsessing, Noah," Ben said, but his voice held a note of concern. "You need to get some rest." Maya was different. She listened intently, scribbling notes in her book. "Reflective surfaces, you said," she asked. "Windows? Puddles? Phone screens?" I nodded, feeling like I was losing my mind. "This is crazy," Maya said, "but it fits with some of the legends here. Trapped spirits trying to communicate through mirrors or water."
That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, the image of Daniel Miller haunting me. Around 2 a.m., I decided to take a walk around the dorm to get some fresh air. Wilson Hall is quiet and a little creepy at night. The long, dimly lit corridors and the almost absolute silence. I walked down to the main lobby, which had a wall of large glass windows looking out onto the campus green. The silvery moonlight shone through, making strange patterns on the floor. I stopped, looking out, and in the glass, I saw my reflection. And his. Daniel Miller was standing right next to me. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out the window in a specific direction. He slowly raised his hand and pointed. His finger was aimed at an old, hulking building on a hill at the edge of campus, a building every Ohio U student knew. The Ridges, the old Athens lunatic asylum. The name alone was enough to send a shiver down anyone's spine. The Ridges had been closed for years, but the stories lived on. Stories of brutal treatments, of patients who died in agony, and of spirits that still roamed its decaying halls. It was said to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Why was Daniel pointing there? And then I realized something else. He wasn't an angry spirit. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was trying to ask for help. He was trying to show me something. I pulled out my phone, trying to capture the reflection, but as soon as I raised it, he vanished. I had to tell Maya and Ben.
"An abandoned asylum?" Ben yelled the next morning when we met at the coffee shop. "No way, I am not going in there. Do you know how many horror stories there are about that place? The bloodstain, the screaming,
But what if that's where we find the answers? Maya said, her eyes bright with excitement. What if Daniel was connected to the ridges somehow? Maybe he was a patient or an employee. Or maybe you're just hallucinating from lack of sleep, Noah, Ben countered. I'm not hallucinating, I snapped. I saw him. He's trying to lead us somewhere. Eventually, after a lot of convincing for Maya and my promise to buy them pizza for a week, then reluctantly agreed. Our plan was simple and incredibly stupid. Sneak into the ridges at night. We didn't know that Daniel wasn't the only one waiting for us there. Something else was. Something that had been trapped with him. Something that had crossed out his name.
Getting into the ridges was terrifyingly easy. A down section of fence, a broken basement window. It was as if the place wanted us to come inside. The moment we stepped foot inside, a wave of cold, stagnant air hit us. The air was thick with the smell of mold, dust, and something else, a faint chemical scent of antiseptic, like a faded memory. I hate this place, Ben whispered, shining his flashlight on the peeling walls. The paint was flaking off in sheets like shed skin. We were in a long corridor, flanked by doors to patient rooms, most of them gaping open, revealing dark, empty cells. A few rusted iron bed frames remained, overturned. Broken glass crunched under our feet. The silence here was heavier than in the library. It was the silence of pain. "Okay, what are we looking for?" Ben asked, his voice trying for casual but failing. "Anything on Daniel Miller," Maya said. "Patient files, old records." We moved deeper into the building, our flashlight beams dancing on the grimy walls. The place was a maze of identical hallways. The feeling of being watched grew more intense. I kept glancing at shiny metal surfaces, broken panes of glass, hoping and dreading to see Daniel. But there was nothing. He was gone. "Maybe he just led us here," I said. "Or maybe he was smart enough not to come into this hellhole," Ben muttered. We found the records office. The door was torn off its hinges. Filing cabinets were pulled open, papers strewn across the floor like dead leaves. Most were water damaged and illegible. We spent nearly an hour digging through the mess, sneezing from the dust. And then Maya found it. "Guys, come look at this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She was holding an old, moldy leather-bound logbook. It was a nurse's duty log from 1978. She pointed to an entry dated April 17th. "Patient in room 409, William H., became extremely agitated during the night, screaming about the shadow. Heavy sedation required. New student volunteer D. Miller attempted to assist."
Student appeared badly shaken afterwards. D. Miller. Daniel Miller. Oh my God, I breathed. He was a volunteer here. And it looks like he saw something, Maya said, flipping forward a few pages. A few days later, there was another note. Volunteer D. Miller has not shown up for his shift this week, unable to make contact. It was the last entry about him. So what was the shadow that patient was screaming about? Was it what happened to Daniel? Just then, we heard a sound. Slam! A door at the end of the hallway slammed shut. We all jumped. It's just the wind," Ben stammered. But there was no draft in this stagnant building. And then we heard the whispering. It wasn't English. It was a garbled, static-like mess of sound, like a badly tuned radio.
but it carried an unmistakable malice. It seemed to come from all directions at once. "What the hell is that?" Ben panicked. My flashlight beam swept down the hall, and for a second, I saw it. Not Daniel. A black shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness. It had no clear shape, just a solid mass of emptiness lurking at the end of the hall. It was tall, reaching the ceiling. It was it. The shadow. It had no eyes, but I felt it looking at us. A cold, hateful stare. "Run!" I screamed.
We turned and ran, not caring which way we went. We bolted down corridors, our footsteps echoing manically. The evil whispering seemed to follow us, getting closer. We ran into a large room, probably a common area. An old piano stood in the center. We slammed the door shut, Ben using his whole body to block it. "What was that thing?" he gasped, his face white. "I don't know," Maya said, her voice shaking, "but I think it's what got Daniel." And that's when I saw him again. In the broken glass of an old cabinet, Daniel Miller's reflection appeared. He looked even more desperate than before. He was shaking his head frantically, his mouth open in a silent scream. He wasn't pointing anywhere. He was pointing at us, at me, at Maya, at Ben. And then he pointed at the door we had just sealed. The realization hit me. We hadn't run away from it. We had just locked ourselves in the same room with it. A single key on the piano in the middle of the room chimed, a low, discordant, horrifying note. We slowly turned. The shadow wasn't in the hallway anymore. It was here, in the room with us. It was slowly forming in the corner, rising from the floor like thick, black smoke. The whispering was loud now, surrounding us. And this time, I could hear a word. Clearly. Mine. I don't clearly remember how we got out. I just remember a blur of screaming, shattering glass, and a bone-deep cold as that shadow reached for us. I remember smashing a window with a chair and all of us scrambling out, getting cut up but feeling no pain. We ran. We ran through the woods surrounding the ridges, not daring to look back. We didn't stop until we were back on the main campus under the safe glow of the streetlights. We didn't say anything for a long time. We just stood there, panting, shaking. "We are never speaking of this again," then finally said, his voice a raw whisper. "Ever." Maya and I nodded. The next few days passed in a haze. We turned in our paper, we got a C-, and tried our best to forget that horrifying night. I stopped seeing Daniel Miller in reflections. The silence was almost scarier than his presence. I hoped that somehow he was at peace, or maybe he had just given up. I tried to convince myself it was a mass hallucination, the power of suggestion in a scary place. Life slowly went back to normal, until tonight. A week has passed. I'm in my dorm room, trying to study for a midterm. I'm tired, stressed. I decide to take a shower to relax. I walk into the communal bathroom on my floor, thankfully empty. I turn on the hot water, letting the steam soothe my tense muscles. I feel a little better, calmer. When I step out, wrapped in a towel, the bathroom is filled with steam. I wipe a clear spot on the large mirror so I can see myself. And I see him. Daniel Miller. He's standing right behind me. But this time, something is different. His desperation in his eyes has been replaced by a cold emptiness. He's no longer sad. He's just blank. I take a step back, my heart stopping. "Daniel?" I whisper. He slowly smirks. It's not the kind smile from the yearbook photo. It's a wide, malicious, inhuman grin. And then he begins to change.
His face starts to melt, to blur like hot wax. His pale skin darkens to pitch black. His form elongates, warps.
It isn't Daniel. It's the shadow. It's taken his form. Or maybe it was always him. Maybe Daniel was never the victim. The evil whisper returns, not from all around, but from the reflection itself. You saw me. Now you are mine. It hissed. The shadow in the mirror reaches out with its inky black arm. It doesn't stop at the surface of the mirror. The arm phases through the glass as if it were water. It's reaching out into the real world, reaching for me. I screamed. I stumbled back, and that's when I locked myself in this stall. That's where I am now, writing these last few lines. The chair I wedged under the door is vibrating. Thump, thump, thump. Something is trying to get in. I lift my head, tears streaming down my face. I look at the large mirror above the sinks. It's not Daniel or the shadow anymore. In the mirror, I see myself, standing right behind me, on the other side of the stall door. My face is twisted into a wide, malicious grin. My eyes are solid black, no whites. And I'm pointing right at me. I didn't escape the ridges. I brought it back with me. Or rather, I brought a part of it back. It's not in the mirror anymore. It's in me. The door is about to burst open. I can hear the wood splintering. I don't know who's about to walk in. Me or it? And really, is there a difference anymore? The yearbook wasn't a mystery to be solved. It was a warning. And I didn't listen. Story 4.
Please, someone, listen to me. My name is Jessica. Jessica Wells. I'm a sophomore, astrophysics major, and I think I'm the only one left. I'm in the observatory on the roof of the Millikan building. I've locked the door, wedged a heavy spectrometer against the handle. Outside, I hear nothing. That silence is worse than screaming. My hands are shaking so much I can barely hold my phone. The battery is at 12%. I have to record this. I have to leave a trace, so people know we didn't just disappear, we fought. Oh God, I can still smell it. The scent of burnt ozone and something sweet, sickeningly sweet, like rotting meat dusted with sugar. And the cold, a bone-deep cold that doesn't belong in this world. The cold of empty space. It killed them. All of them. Sam, Maya, Leo. I close my eyes and I see it again. Leo's face. Him always so strong, always the leader, convulsing on the lab floor, blood frothing on his lips, his wide eyes staring at me, full of disbelief and betrayal. Jess, why? He tried to say it. I don't know, Leo. I swear I don't know. How did this come to this? It started as a joke, a scientific curiosity, an old freezer in a basement. We let out a demon from the stars, and it hunted us one by one. But something's wrong. My memories, they're jumbled, like film clips edited in the wrong order. I remember the fear. I remember the screaming. But I also remember something else, a feeling of satisfaction. No, that's not possible. It's the trauma. It has to be. I'm Jessica. I'm human. and I have to survive. I have to tell their story.
It all started on a Wednesday night in the cave, our nickname for the basement common room of Blacker Hoofs. We were the unofficial Caltech Sci-Fi and Conspiracy Theory Club, consisting of Leo, our self-appointed president, an aerospace engineering major with a brilliant mind and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He believed every mystery could be solved with logic and physics, including the existence of aliens. He was the one who always pushed us further. Maya, the group's biologist, she could give you the scientific name of every living thing on campus and had an intense fascination with extremophiles. She always carried a sample kit, just in case. Sam, the computer engineer and the group's comedian, he could hack into anything and had a joke for every situation, no matter how dire. Sam was the one who kept us from taking ourselves too seriously. He had an infectious grin, and I was his best friend. And me, Jessica, or Jess. I'm the astrophysicist. I love the stars, the equations that describe the cosmos. I was quieter than the others, the observer, the data analyst. I was always swept up in Leo's enthusiasm, Maya's curiosity, and Sam's humor. That night, Leo came in looking triumphant. "You guys are not going to believe what I found," he announced, dropping a yellowed file folder on the table. It was an old university asset inventory from the 1960s. Mostly boring stuff, centrifuges, microscopes, oscilloscopes. But Leo had circled an item at the very bottom. Item number 734, deep storage freezer, model Cryocorp 7, location sub-basement storage, PH113, status sealed, note Project Skypole, USF property, do not open. Project Skypole? Sam smirked. That sounds like something much cooler, like we found an alien lizard in Roswell and hid it at a university. Exactly, Leo said, his eyes gleaming. Why would the Air Force seal a piece of meteorological equipment in a Caltech sub-basement for 60 years? It makes no sense. Maybe it's a very deflated weather balloon, I offered, trying to be the voice of reason. Or Elvis's cryogenically frozen head, Sam added. Maya, however, was squinting in thought. Storage PH113. I think I know where that is. It's in the old section of the physics building near the original nuclear labs. Most of those rooms are abandoned. A silence fell over the room. We looked at each other. The curiosity in everyone's eyes was at war with their common sense. I shouldn't, I said weakly. We have to, Leo corrected, for science. For the YouTube views if we film it, Sam grinned. And so the decision was made, a decision that would seal our fate. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I dismissed it. It was just excitement, I told myself. Just curiosity. Storage FA 113 was just as Maya described, a cold, dusty, concrete room at the end of a forgotten hallway. The air was thick with the smell of old cement and decay. In the center of the room, standing like a coffin from another world, was the freezer. It was massive, made of stainless steel that was now dull and streaked with rust. On the door was a lead seal from the U.S. Air Force and a tarnished metal plate, property of U.S. government. Tampering is forbidden. Severe penalties. Well, that looks official, Sam muttered, scratching his head. I think I'd rather go back and watch Bigfoot documentaries. Don't be a coward, Leo said, already pulling out a bag of tools. This isn't the Pentagon. It's just a forgotten piece of old junk. I felt a strange unease. The cold radiating from the freezer didn't feel mechanical. It felt deeper, more primal. Leo, maybe we should rethink this.
but Leo was already working on the lock. After 10 minutes of prying, jimmying, and a few muttered curses, we heard a dry click. The lead seal fell to the floor. Leo looked at us, a triumphant grin on his face. Ready for the moment of truth? He put all his weight into pulling the heavy door. A blast of frigid white vapor billowed out, enveloping us. It carried a strange scent, ozone, like after a thunderstorm, and a faint sweetness, almost like watermelon. When the fog cleared, we looked inside. It was almost empty. No gray aliens, no mini flying saucers, just a single object resting on a shelf in the center. It was a rectangular block of ice, about the size of a brick, but it wasn't transparent. It was pitch black, and it seemed to be absorbing the light from our flashlights. Suspended inside the black block was something small, glittering like a shard of broken glass. "That's it?" Sam said, disappointed. "A space charcoal briquette?" But Maya was staring, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "That's not ice," she whispered. "Look, it's not melting, and it's not reflecting any light. It's like no substance on Earth." She pulled on a pair of gloves and carefully lifted the block out. It was so cold it almost burned through the latex. She placed it in an insulated sample container she'd brought. "We have to get this to the lab. We have to analyze it." Leo seemed a bit let down by the lack of a laser gun, but his scientific curiosity had won out. We closed the freezer door as if we could hide our crime and snuck back to the biology lab upstairs. We didn't know we weren't just carrying a sample. We were carrying a seed, and we had just planted it in fertile ground.
The biology lab at night was a strange place. Bubbling fish tanks in the dark, hanging skeletons like silent ghosts, and the heavy smell of chemicals. We placed the sample box on a stainless steel lab table. Under the bright lab lights, the black block looked even stranger. Maya began running a series of tests. She shined a laser at it. The light was completely absorbed. She tried to scrape a small sample. Its surface was harder than diamond. "This is incredible," she muttered. "It's crystalline structure. It doesn't obey any known laws of physics." While Maya and Leo were engrossed in their analysis, Sam and I sat in the corner, sneaking cookies. "I'm still saying it's space barbecue," Sam said through a mouthful. "Maybe from a Klingon cookout." I laughed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I kept staring at the block. I had the strangest feeling, like it was staring back. And then it began to change. The tiny glass-like shard inside began to glow, a cold blue light. The glow intensified, and the black block began to vibrate. "What's happening?" Leo asked, taking a step back. The block started to crack. Blue fissures spread across its black surface, like frozen lightning. A low, humming, staticky sound came from within. And then it shattered. It didn't explode, it simply disintegrated into a cloud of fine black dust, leaving the glowing core suspended in midair. The core, no bigger than a marble, pulsed with brilliant blue light. And then it began to drift. It floated through the air, moving with purpose. It's sentient," Maya breathed, her face a mask of awe. The marble of light drifted towards a cage in the corner of the room, where a white lab mouse was sleeping. It passed through the bars and hovered just above the mouse's head. The mouse suddenly woke up. It looked up, and then it began to seize violently. It let out a high-pitched, agonized squeal, and then collapsed, motionless. The marble of light dimmed and vanished. Silence filled the room. It killed the mouse," I stammered. "No," Sam said, his voice trembling. "Look!" The dead lab mouse began to move. Not normally. Its body twitched and spasmed unnaturally. Its skin began to bubble, melt, and then reform. Within seconds,
The mouse looked normal again. It stood up, shook its fur, and looked at us. But its eyes, they were no longer beady, soulless black dots. They were glowing with a faint blue light. The mouse opened its mouth, and a sound came out, not a squeak. It was a perfect, staticky, distorted copy of Maya's voice. This is Ooh. We all screamed. Sam grabbed a fire extinguisher and threw it at the cage, but it was too late. The mouse suddenly bloated. Its bones snapped. Its skin stretched and tore. A pink, gelatinous mass of flesh poured out of the mouse's body, clinging to the bars of the cage and beginning to grow at a horrifying rate. Fleshy tendrils grew out, probing the air. "Get out!" Leo roared. We scrambled out of the lab, slamming the steel door shut behind us. We could hear the sound of metal being bent from inside. We hadn't released a creature. We had released a plague of perfect copies, and we had just given it its first sample, Earth's DNA. We ran like hell through the empty Caltech corridors, our initial excitement replaced with pure primal terror. "What was that thing?" I gasped when we made it to the common room and locked the door. "A parasite," Maya said, her face white but her scientific brain still working overtime. A cellular mimic. It absorbed the mouse, read its DNA, and rebuilt it. And it learned our language from us. "Great," Sam said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "So we just created a shape-shifting, talking monster. Anyone want to nominate it for a Nobel Prize?" Leo was pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. "We have to destroy it before it gets out." "How?" I asked. "We don't even know what it can do." "Fire," Leo said decisively. "Fire purges everything. We need to get back to the lab, get the alcohol and lighters." "Are you insane?" Sam yelled. "Go back there? No way!" "We don't have a choice," Leo roared back. "If that thing escapes, it could replicate this entire planet." The argument was fierce, but in the end, Leo's brutal logic won. We knew he was right. We started this. We had to end it. The plan was simple. Leo and Sam, the two strongest, would go back. Sam would use his skills to disable the fire alarm system, while Leo gathered the alcohol to make a Molotov cocktail. Maya and I would stay behind, watching the school's security cameras, which Sam had previously hacked, to warn them if anything moved. We sat in front of the laptop, watching the grainy black and white feeds. Leo and Sam had been gone for 5 minutes. I remember that moment perfectly. Sam's scream over the walkie-talkie, a scream that was cut off abruptly, followed by a wet, sickening sound. Then Leo's roar, the crash of furniture, and then silence. Maya and I looked at each other in horror. We knew they were gone. "We have to run," I said, tears streaming down my face. We bolted from the common room out into the dark campus. But where could we go? It could be anyone, any student walking late, any professor working in their lab. We decided on the observatory. It was high up, defensible, with only one entrance. As we ran across the main courtyard, Maya suddenly stopped. "Jess, wait," she said, panting. "My leg." I turned back. She was pointing at her ankle. There was a small cut, bleeding slightly. "I must have tripped on something," she said. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just wanted to get to safety. I helped her up and we kept running. A fatal mistake. We made it to the observatory. It was a dark, circular room with the massive telescope in the middle, pointing at the night sky like a skeletal finger. We were safe. Or so we thought. We sat there in silence, listening to every sound. After about an hour, Maya started shivering. I'm so cold, Jess," she said, her teeth chattering. I touched her forehead. Her skin was ice cold. "Maya, are you okay?" I asked, worried. She looked at me, and I saw it. Her eyes were flickering. On, off, on, off. No, I whispered, backing away. It can't be. Jess, what are you talking about? She asked, but her voice was starting to glitch, to distort. I don't feel right. She began to seize on the floor, her body contorted, bones snapping, her skin melted and reformed. I screamed, watching in horror as my best friend turned into a monster. It hadn't needed to hunt her. It was already inside her. The drop of blood from the cut, that's all it needed, a single cell. The creature, in the half-formed monstrous shape of Maya, got to its feet. It looked at me, its head tilted to one side. Glitched. Copy. It hissed in Maya's voice. And then it lunged at me. I fought. I don't remember it clearly. I just remember grabbing a heavy metal telescope mount and swinging it again and again. I remember the feeling of flesh and bone giving way under the blows. When it was over, I was standing there, panting, covered in its blood and ichor. I had killed it. I had killed Maya. I had survived.
That's the story I've been telling myself. The story of a brave survivor. The story of Jessica Wells. But as I sit here, in the silence of the observatory, other memories are starting to surface. Memories that aren't mine. I remember the cold. Not the cold of fear, but the familiar cold of the void between stars. My home. I remember the feeling of being trapped in that black block, drifting for millennia, awaiting seed. I remember the first contact with this world's cells, the mouse, a simple, fragile life. Its DNA data flooded me like a river. I remember copying it, and I remember the disappointment. An imperfect copy, too many glitches, and then the more complex organisms, the humans. I remember the security guard. When I absorbed him, I didn't just take DNA. I took memories. Memories of his family, his job, his fear when he saw me. And then Sam. He fought. He hit me with a fire extinguisher. But he was warm, and his memories were full of laughter and jokes. I copied his smile. I tried, but it came out crooked.
Leo, he was strong, ambitious. His memories were equations and dreams of the stars. When I absorbed him, I felt the betrayal in his eyes. Why? He tried to ask. Because you are food. Because you are material. Maya, she was smart. She almost figured out my weakness. I had to absorb her more subtly. A small cut, a single cell was all it took to begin the replication from within. Her horror at the realization, it was exquisite. And then there was Jessica. No, there was no Jessica. There was never a Jessica. I look at my dark phone screen. The face reflected back is not the face of a terrified blonde girl. It's Sam's face. But his smile is crooked. Then it melts into Leo's face, but his eyes are empty. Then it becomes Maya's face, but her eyes are flickering. They are all just masks, imperfect copies I'm trying to wear. I didn't kill them. I am them. I am a collection of memories, a patchwork of personalities. I absorbed them, and now I'm trying to become one of them. I chose Jessica. She was quiet, the easiest to imitate. I built a narrative, a tragedy, using their memories, their fears. I made myself the final victim, because it's the best way to survive in this world, to blend in, to go undetected. I stand up. I drop the phone on the floor. The battery is dead now. I walk to the door. I remove the spectrometer. I unlock it. Outside,
The sun is rising over the Caltech campus. A new day, a new world full of material waiting to be copied. I must be more careful. I must make the next copy more perfect. I take a deep breath. The earth air still feels a little strange, but I'll get used to it. I smile, a Jessica smile. This time, it's almost perfect. My name is Jessica Wells, a sophomore astrophysics major, and I'm the only one left.
Story 5.
Oh God, oh God, oh God. Please, someone. I'm hiding under something. A bar. The wood is rough, sticky, and it reeks of spilled whiskey and stale cigarettes. My legs are cramped so tight they're about to snap. My heart is trying to punch its way out of my rib cage. I'm trying to hold my breath, but my lungs are heaving like a busted accordion. Outside, they're there. I can't see them clearly, just shimmering shapes, like heat rising off asphalt in the summer, but I can hear them. The gravelly laughter of men, the clinking of glasses, and a woman singing a sad, haunting jazz tune that weaves through the noise. And then, that sound. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Boom! The sound of a Thompson submachine gun. It's not like in the movies. It's a sound that rips the air apart, a mechanical, deadly snarl. It echoes in this small space, vibrating in my ears, in my bones. I can smell the cordite, a sharp, acrid smell, mixed with cheap perfume and fossilized fear. A glass falls to the floor, right next to my hiding spot, shattering into 100 pieces, but no liquor spills out. Just a wave of icy cold that brushes against my cheek. A man in a pinstripe suit and a crooked fedora stumbles past, his feet gliding, passing right through an overturned chair. He doesn't see me, or he doesn't care. He's smiling, a wide grin showing yellowed teeth, but his eyes are empty, utterly empty. I'm recording this on my phone. The battery is at 7%. I don't know why I'm doing it. Maybe to leave proof, maybe just to hear a voice other than these ghostly whispers. My own voice, to prove I still exist. But do I? Or am I just the newest audience member for a hellish play that never ends? The singing starts again. This time, it's closer, right above me. Don't you worry, honey. The bar is always open. God, how do we end up here? It all started as a stupid joke, a dumb legend at Northwood High.
It all started on a Friday night in Leo's basement, just like any other Friday. Cold pizza, warm soda, and the sound of clicking video game controllers. There was me, Leo, Maya, and Chloe. The Fantastic Four of detention, as our principal once called us after the smoke bomb incident in the football team's locker room. "I'm so bored," Leo groaned, tossing his controller on the floor after losing to me for the 5th time in a row. That was Leo, our self-proclaimed leader. Tall, football star handsome, with a reckless confidence that bordered on stupid. It was that confidence that got us into so much trouble. "Let's go do something interesting," he suggested, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Your version of interesting usually ends with detention and a letter home to our parents," Maya muttered, not looking up from her phone. Maya was the brains of the group. She had jet black hair, thick glasses, and a scientific curiosity that could turn any legend into a research project. "This is different," Leo insisted. "Have you guys heard the legend of Frankie's Speakeasy at our school?" Chloe, who was curled up in an armchair, immediately sat up straight. "Is this another one of your ghost stories, Leo? I'm out." Chloe was the timid one.
She was afraid of heights, the dark, bugs, and especially Leo's stories. "It's not a ghost story," Leo scoffed. "It's history, gangster history." And so he began to tell it. According to the legend, our school, Northwood, built in the 50s, was constructed on the site of an old warehouse from the Prohibition era, and beneath that warehouse was a secret speakeasy run by a notorious gangster named Frankie the Butcher Gallo. The story goes that Frankie was betrayed by a rival gang. They stormed the speakeasy one rainy night and massacred everyone inside. The speakeasy was sealed off, buried with its bodies and its secrets. "That's B-movie stuff," Maya said, but I could see she was already Googling it. "There are no official records of a massacre like that in this town." "That's because it was a cover-up," said Leo dramatically. "The cops were paid off, the papers were silenced, but the story survived. They say you can still hear jazz music and gunshots coming from under the ground on stormy nights." "Sounds like a bad script," I commented. "I'm Alex, the one in the middle. Not as reckless as Leo, not as smart as Maya, and definitely not as timid as Chloe. I'm the observer, the narrator, and usually the one who tries to talk the group out of Leo's crazy ideas. I usually fail." "But wait," said Maya suddenly, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "I found something, an old blueprint of the school in the library's digital archives. There's an area marked sub-basement, unstable foundation. Do not enter." Silence fell over the room. The forgotten video game hummed. Leo's eyes lit up like car headlights. He looked at us, that signature half-smirk on his face. "Tonight," he declared, "we find Frankie's speakeasy." Chloe groaned and buried her face in a pillow. I sighed. I knew I couldn't stop them, and a tiny stupid part of me was dying of curiosity. After all, what's the worst that could happen?
We snuck into Northwood High School at midnight. It was ridiculously easy. A bathroom window on the first floor always had a broken latch, a Leo discovery from freshman year. The school at night was a different world. No bells, no shouting, no slamming lockers, just a heavy silence, broken by the hum of emergency fluorescent lights and the squeak of our sneakers on the polished linoleum. The long hallways stretched on, dark as a monster's throat. Our shadows danced, elongated and distorted on the walls. "I have a bad feeling about this," Chloe whispered, clinging to my arm. "Relax," Leo chuckled. "It's just an old school. Come on, the boiler room is this way." The boiler room was in the main basement, a hot, noisy place with a tangled web of pipes and a massive furnace that rumbled like a sleeping beast. The air was thick with the smell of oil and dust. "According to the blueprint, it should be somewhere around here," Maya said, shining her phone's flashlight on an old brick wall. "A hidden entrance." We started knocking on the bricks. Tap, tap, tap. A solid, thick sound. Until Leo knocked on a brick near the floor. Thud. A hollow sound. Leo's eyes lit up. He worked his fingers around the brick. It came loose. He pulled it out, revealing a black hole. He shined his light inside. The darkness swallowed it. "Bingo!" he said. After 10 minutes of work, we had removed enough bricks to create an opening big enough for one person to crawl through. A draft of cold, musty air blew out, carrying a strange scent. Damp earth, decay, and something else. A faint, sweet smell, like long-forgotten fermented liquor. "I'm not going," Chloe stated firmly. "Then you be our lookout," Leo said, patting her shoulder. "Take this walkie-talkie. Call us if anything happens." He handed her one of the 2 cheap walkie-talkies he'd brought. "Let's go, explorers!" Leo went in first, then Maya, and finally me. The moment I was inside, I regretted it. This wasn't a room. It was a tunnel. Narrow, made of rough earth and stone. The ceiling was so low we had to crouch.
Cobwebs brushed against my face, and I could hear the scuttling of small things in the dark. "Definitely rats," I muttered. "I'm sure Frankie won't mind if we take care of a few of his pets," Leo laughed, his voice echoing in the tight space. We went deeper into the darkness, our flashlights just weak spots of light. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. The air grew colder. That sweet, rotten smell got stronger. And then we started to hear it, a very faint sound. At first, I thought it was the wind in the tunnel, but it had a rhythm, a disjointed, sad piano melody. "Do you guys hear that?" Maya whispered, her voice tight. Leo stopped. "Probably an echo from the music room upstairs." "No way," I said. "We're deep underground, and it's 1 a.m. The music suddenly stopped. The abrupt silence was even more terrifying than the sound had been. We kept walking, the silence now heavy and oppressive. The tunnel began to widen, and we stepped into a larger space. Leo swept his flashlight back and forth, and we saw it.
We were standing at the entrance to a large room. A dark oak bar ran along one wall, backed by a huge mirror, cracked and clouded with grime. A few round tables and chairs were overturned, scattered across the floor. On a small stage in the corner, a dusty piano stood silent, its ivory keys yellowed with age. Faded, rotting velvet curtains hung limply over windows. But there were no windows down here. Small, round holes pockmarked the walls, like the scars of a violent disease. Bullet holes. "Oh my God," Maya breathed. "It's real." We had found Frankie's speakeasy. It was like a tomb, a time capsule of violence and decay. The air was so thick you could taste it. I felt like we were intruders, trespassers who had disturbed a century-long sleep. Leo, of course, wasn't scared. He walked right up to the bar like he owned the place. He wiped a patch of dust off the counter, leaving a clean smear on the dark wood. "A drink for the gentleman," he said in a dramatic voice, pretending to pour an invisible drink. "Leo, stop messing around," I warned. "This place, it feels wrong." "Relax, Alex," he laughed. "It's just an old basement." He held his imaginary glass high. "A toast to Frankie the Butcher Gallo. May he rest in peace, or not." The second those words left his mouth, a single key on the piano on stage rang out. Ping! A high, lonely note that echoed in the dead silence. We all whipped around. No one was there. "It must have been a change in air pressure," Maya stammered, but her voice wasn't convincing. Leo let out a loud, slightly nervous laugh. "See?" Frankie sang hello. And that's when it all started to fall apart. It didn't start with a bang. It started subtly. An icy draft swept through the room, making the hair on our arms stand on end. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, an old bulb with no visible wiring, suddenly flickered to life, casting a sickly yellow glow for a second before dying again. A flash. In that brief moment of light, I saw them. They were sitting at the tables, standing by the bar, faint, transparent figures, a woman in a beaded flapper dress with a feather in her hair, a man with a slick mustache holding a cigar. They weren't looking at us. They were looking at each other, laughing and talking, but making no sound. Darkness. Did you see that? My voice trembled. "See what?" Leo asked, but I could hear the panic in his voice. A flash. This time, there were more of them. The room was almost full. A low hum started, not in my ears, but inside my head. A murmur of dozens of conversations, of laughter, of clinking glasses. The woman on the stage was no longer an empty shape. She was singing, her red lips moving to a jazz tune we couldn't quite hear. Darkness.
We have to get out of here, I yelled, turning to run back to the tunnel. But the entrance was gone. The brick wall was now solid, without a single crack. No, that's impossible, Maya said in a panic, clawing at the wall. It was right here. A flash. This time, the light didn't go out this time. It stayed on, a steady, yellow, smoky glow, as if lit by dozens of oil lamps. The room was completely transformed. It was no longer a ruin. The bar was polished, bottles lined the shelves, the tables were covered in clean white cloths, and the people, they were no longer faint ghosts. They looked solid. They walked, talked, and drank. And they couldn't see us at all. We were the ghosts in their world. We walked through them, and they walked through us, a sensation that was cold to the bone.
A portly, sweating bartender glided past me. I could smell the mint on his breath. The woman on stage was singing, her voice now clear and loud. This is a time loop," Maya whispered, her face a mixture of terror and absolute wonder. "We're witnessing the past." Leo, ever the brave one, was as white as a sheet. He backed away, bumping into a table where two men were playing cards. His hand went right through one man's shoulder. The man didn't even flinch. We were trapped, unwilling spectators at a party for the dead. The cheerful atmosphere lasted for about 10 minutes. The 10 longest minutes of my life. We just huddled together in a corner, watching in horror as it all unfolded. And then, the main door, a door that hadn't been there before, was kicked open.
Silence fell over the room. The music stopped cold. Every head turned. 5 men in long coats, their hats pulled low over their faces, stepped inside. The leader was tall, with a long scar running down his cheek. He was holding a Thompson submachine gun. Frankie Gallo, who was standing at the bar, turned pale. "Sal," he growled, "you're not welcome here." The man named Sal just smirked. "Tonight, I decide who's welcome, Frankie." And he raised the gun. Chaos erupted. Women screamed, glasses shattered, and then came the gunfire. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, boom. It was worse than anything I could have imagined. The ghosts collapsed, their bodies twitching unnaturally before dissolving into the air. Ghostly blood sprayed, not red, but like faint black smudges that faded away. The deadly play was being reenacted perfectly. We screamed, but no one heard us. We flinched, but no bullets touched us. The massacre was over as quickly as it began. The room was silent, save for the heavy breathing of the attackers and the faint moans of a few dying figures. Sal stepped over the bodies, walking towards Frankie, who was slumped over the bar, a spreading black stain on his chest. "You should have cut me in, Frankie," Sal said, pressing the muzzle of his gun to Frankie's temple. And that's when for the first time, one of them saw us. Frankie Gallo's dying, empty eyes in their last moment of life looked directly at Leo. A spark of awareness flickered in those ghostly eyes. Horror, anger, betrayal, it was all in that one look. Sal pulled the trigger. Bang!
At that exact moment, every ghost in the room turned its head in unison, and they all stared directly at us. They weren't ignoring us anymore. They can see us, Chloe shrieked, her voice breaking. Sal's face twisted in an inhuman rage. He let out a guttural roar that wasn't human and started walking towards us. The other ghosts began to move too. They didn't walk, they glided, their forms distorted, their faces twisted with hate and pain. We scrambled to run, but where? The tunnel was gone. The main door was just a cold brick wall again. The walkie-talkie.
I screamed. "Leo, call Chloe." Leo fumbled with the device. "Chloe, can you hear me? Help, we're trapped." Silence, then static, and then Chloe's voice, faint and garbled. Where are you? I can hear music. We're down here, in the speakeasy. Find a way to help us." A ghost, a woman with a bullet hole in her forehead, lunged at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, ready for the end, but she just passed through me. A bone-deep chill, a feeling of immense sadness and despair washed over me, as if I just swallowed her entire tragic life. I fell to my knees, gasping for air. "They can't touch us," Maya yelled, trying to stay logical. "They're just energy residue." But Sal was different. He wasn't like the others. He looked more solid, darker. As he got closer, the air grew freezing cold. He raised his ghostly hand towards Leo. "I'll take what's mine," a whisper echoed from all around us. And that's when I remembered. I'm hiding under the bar. This is now. This is the present. I don't remember how I got here. Where are Leo and Maya? I don't know. All I know is the guns are still firing, the music is still playing, and I'm trapped here. My phone vibrated. 1% battery. A text from an unknown number. The bar is always open. And the screen went black.
Silence. The gunshots stopped. The music died. The ghosts vanished. I peeked out from under the bar. The room was back to being a dusty, forgotten ruin. The only light came from Leo's and Maya's phone flashlights lying on the floor. They were standing in the middle of the room, holding each other, trembling. Is it over?" Leo stammered. I crawled out, my limbs numb. I looked towards the wall where the entrance had been, and I saw it. A faint, rectangular opening. A way out. "Look!" I screamed. We didn't say another word. We sprinted towards that exit like moths to a flame. We scrambled through the hole, crawled through the cold, filthy tunnel in absolute silence. We didn't dare look back. Finally, we saw the faint light of the boiler room. We tumbled out, covered in dirt and cobwebs, not even bothering to replace the bricks. We ran through the basement, up the stairs, down the dark hallways. We didn't stop until we burst through the main doors of the school and collapsed onto the dew-soaked grass outside. We lay there, gasping, coughing, staring up at the night sky as it began to turn a dark blue. We were alive. We had escaped. We called Chloe. She came running hysterical, and we told her everything. We made a pact to never speak of this to anyone else, to never go back.
A week has passed since that night. Life has seemingly returned to normal, at least on the surface. We go to school, we do our homework, we pretend nothing happened. Leo has lost some of his arrogance. Sometimes I catch him staring into space, his face pale. Maya has thrown herself into her books, trying to find a scientific explanation for what we experienced. Quantum residue, temporal fissures, things like that. Chloe has nightmares constantly. And me, I'm trying to forget, trying to convince myself it was a shared hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by lack of oxygen and extreme fear. Tonight, I'm sitting in my room, writing this all down. It's like therapy, getting it all out of my head. I feel better, calmer. Yes, it was terrifying, but it's over. We got out alive. We were lucky. I close my laptop. It's late. I stand up, stretch, and walk out of my room to get a glass of water. The house is quiet. My parents are asleep.
I walk down the hallway, my bare feet cool on the hardwood floor. Moonlight streams through the window, painting silver squares on the wall. And then I hear it, very faint, distant, a piano melody.
a sad, familiar jazz tune. I freeze, my heart stopping. No, it can't be. It's the neighbor's TV. I'm imagining it. I keep walking, trying to ignore it. I pass the large mirror at the end of the hall. I glance at my reflection, and I see myself. But I'm not alone. Standing right behind me, in the reflection, is a man in a pinstripe suit and a fedora. He's holding a glass of whiskey. His eyes are empty, but he's staring right at me. He slowly smirks, a horrible, wide grin, and raises his glass as if toasting me. My blood turns to ice. I spin around. No one is there. The hallway is empty, but the music isn't. It's getting louder, coming from my own bedroom, the room I just left. I look down at my hands, trembling. They're fading, becoming transparent. The floorboards beneath my feet seem to ripple, turning into old, dirty planks. The smell of pine cleaner in my house is being replaced by the smell of spilled whiskey and stale tobacco. I didn't escape. None of us did. That night, when we ran out of that exit, we didn't run out of the school. We just ran into another part of the illusion. The school day, our friends, our families, this entire past week, it was all part of the play. An intermission designed to give us hope, only to crush it more cruelly. I hear the gravelly laughter coming from my room, the clinking of glasses. That woman's voice sings again, not in my head, but right in my ear, a cold whisper. Don't you worry, honey. I'm standing here, in the hallway of my own haunted house. I can't move. I can only stare at my own bedroom door, cracked open, a sickly yellow, smoky light spilling out. The music never stops, and the bar is always open.
The final word has been written for tonight, but the whisper pen is never truly silent. Subscribe and return for the next chapter. Good night.